Hi everyone, welcome to the Chai Tea Tai Chi web show. I'm Dane Dormio, and we get to talk to a fascinating new guest today, Danny Schultz, who is going to tell us what Red Jade Martial Arts is all about. How's it going, Danny?
Oh, it's going pretty well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, the first thing I'd like to know about actually is what's your origin story? How did you get involved with martial arts, and why are you still doing it?
It's actually a funny story how I got involved. Basically, I was a young boy, and my mother decided that I can't just play games and not be active. So she's just like, okay, you have two options. You can join this martial arts studio that just opened up, or you can do ballet with your sister. So the choice was obvious for me. But yeah, then I.
Yeah, so why did you drop out of ballet? I'm just kidding.
Right. So yeah, I've started picking up on Japanese martial arts originally at first, and then I went into Chinese martial arts when I got into high school, and then I've been doing that ever since. And really, where I got to where I am today is really just a bunch of lucky breaks, just finding the good teachers. I started out with like a local place in Fox Lake, Illinois, and then I moved to a place in Wisconsin and started studying there. And at the same time, I've been doing online studying with teacher Neil Ripsky. And then it was after my time in Wisconsin that I decided to meet him in person. And so I've been training with him ever since. And right now, I currently hold third black in his style. And I've been trying to go through his curriculum as best I can. And so I've opened up a school of my own. I've also had opportunities to meet masters like Wei Chung Lin, who is living in Skokie, Illinois, who's passed away now, but he was a really good promoter of internal martial arts. I've also gotten to meet Zhou Xunyun, a Wudang priest who is doing seminars around. And I've also gotten to meet George Shu, or Shu Guangming, in a seminar in Oregon. So yeah, just been in the right place at the right time and had good teachers. Really, I'm just a lucky guy.
So it sounds like uh, originally at a young age it wasn't a thing that you were into, but you were kind of pushed into it and ended up developing an interest that kind of broadened and expanded and
Yeah,
took you to seek out other kinds of martial arts eventually.
yeah, I've studied so many at this point. So I started out with a form of karate when I was a little tyke, and then when I started into Chinese martial arts, I started with Yang Style Taiji and Shaolin Kung Fu. And then my second teacher in Wisconsin per- continued to develop my Yang Style Taiji and Shaolin Kung Fu and introduced me to Southern Hungar. And my teacher in Ma Family curriculum, which is Neil Ripsky, my current teacher, it's a it's a Shaolin based style with like lots of different systems. So like a lot of animal systems like tiger, praying mantis, all those kinds of things, including also styles like drunken boxing, Xingyi, Bagua, Taiji, and yeah, I've been studying heavily that system, and it's really been my favorite out of all the systems I've been a part of. I've also gotten to dabble in some Wudang Kung Fu from the Wudang priest that I met, as well as some Choli foot sets that I got introduced to by my Hungar teacher. So I've had a little bit of dabbling in everything, but my primary focus is in the Ma family Kung Fu.
So the Ma family kung fu is an internal style from what it sounds like you're describing. I can relate to this journey because I started out in martial arts as a kid. Actually, uh, I was really into the Ninja Turtles,
Oh
and
yeah, me too.
um, and I was so into the Ninja Turtles. My parents decided um, that well, we should probably sign him up for some martial arts lessons, and the kind of generic thing available was like generic taekwondo in small town Arkansas at that time. So that's what I started out doing. um, a lot of jumping around and kicking high. But then I uh, I branched out and went further and pursued other types of martial arts. And when I became a young adult was when I discovered Chinese martial arts and internal martial arts in particular. So I can kind of relate to this journey that you're describing. And something else I'm curious about based on what you're saying is so the uh, I'm curious about the name Red Jade. Actually, where does that come from? Because is this another name for Ma Family Kung Fu?
No, it's the school name. My teacher's original school name was Red Jade Kung Fu, and it's named after a sword that was given to him by his previous wife that was named and scripted as Red Jade. And it's believed that it actually seen battle. It was like an antique sword. So he named the school after that sword.
I see. Yeah, names are interesting. I when I first learned internal martial arts, I went to a school that was just called the Kung Fu Academy,
Oh, yeah.
and and I can understand why, because the teacher there, he actually taught two different kind of obscure family styles of Chinese family styles of Kung Fu that were completely unrelated, had nothing to do with each other, but they were both obscure. So so officially, what the styles that were taught there were Sansu and Bak Fu Pai, but nobody had ever heard of those or know what they were. So it's easier to just say Kung Fu, or just to say Tai Chi in the case of Bak Fu Pai, which is an internal style. So
Yeah.
so we just kind of defaulted to saying Kung Fu or Tai Chi for convenience.
Right. Yeah, that is a catch-all phrase, and everybody knows it by that, right?
But there's I like to saying same root, different branches, or one root, many branches, different versions of that, because I I see there. I mean, there's sort of universal things like the 18 Lohan poems, for instance. I'm pretty sure I saw that that's a part of your system, or at least your teacher system, and that was also a central part of the martial qigong that I learned as well. Um, so uh, the um, what specifically is distinctive about the Ma family kung fu as opposed to other kung fu styles and other internal kung fu styles in particular?
Gotcha. So basically, the way the Ma family like worked, like they like had their own village and they raised horses and whatnot. They were a very wealthy family from what I remember, and they were also a kung fu family that just constantly training kung fu and then passing on generation to generation. They also lived very close to Shaolin Temple, so they lived in Dongfeng, and they just constantly, because there's also like a lot of martial arts schools around there, right? So they go to different schools. They like send people to go to different schools, learn from them, and then take back what they learned, and then create their system out of that. They'd also have wandering travelers that would come in, and especially like the Shaolin monks during the time like the temple was raided and burned down. They would take them in and give them a place to stay in exchange for kung fu lessons. So they get like pieces of different styles, and they've kind of pieced together what they have as Ma Family Kung Fu. So the way that the Ma Family system works is that we have all these different systems and styles, and you change from one to the other quicker and quicker and quicker, so that the opponent never has an idea of what you're doing before it's already changed. So, for example, I may be a snake boxer, and a snake boxer really doesn't like to have his hands grabbed because it's the heads of the snake, right? it's very hard to move around and stick with somebody when you have your hands grabbed. But Eagle system, for example, loves to be grabbed because it's all about chin on joint locks. So once it's grabbed, it can re-grab you and then put you in joint locks as well. So if you were grabbed at the wrists and you were snake, you change to eagle, and then you could use the situation that you're currently in and now benefit from it. So it's always on rhythms, right? So you are changing from one to the other so quickly that the other person just doesn't have a time to react and respond. So I may be Taiji 1 minute, I may be a long fist boxer the next minute, I may be a drunken boxer right after that, but the opponent will never know. It's just changing so quickly. That's like the general frame of what the Ma Family system is about. So you have like your fundamentals that you learn, and then you go throughout the system and you learn all the different systems as you go, and then you piece it all together into the Ma Family curriculum, which then is all the systems combined. Not necessarily combined as in you are all these things at all the times, but you are one thing and then you are the next thing really quickly. So it's all about change. Very much how Taiji is all about change, from yin to yang, yang to yin. It's all about changing quicker and quicker. So I may be pung, I may be expansive, and then I redirect, but I have to do that quickly in order to deal with the incoming force. So it's the same kind of idea, but taken with all these different systems.
So it sounds like it's a big feature is adaptability.
Yep. Adaptability, versatility is very much in the Ma Family Kung Fu.
So how did you what led you to writing a book on Shaolin Long Fist?
Well, it was my first book. I didn't even know if I was really a good writer. I'd only written a couple articles at that point, so I wanted to pick something very simple, and Long Fist is kind of like the beginning style, not necessarily like not advanced or anything, but it's like the most simple to learn, so I figured it'd be easy to write about. And I do like Long Fist. It's a very neat style, but it was definitely a good one to start out with. And of course, I'm writing a new book now on monkey boxing because I'm trying to work out of my shell a little bit and work on something more complicated. But yeah, Long Fist was definitely a good one to start out, and I think it's been pretty well received from what I've been hearing so far. Most people have been telling me it's a good book, so I'm happy with it.
So what exactly is it that the book is designed to transmit?
It's got a little bit of everything. It's got beginning foundations for people who are like beginning out and wanting to start something and maybe they don't have a teacher nearby. And it's also got the advanced, like later stages of Kung Fu where you're working on reaching out power and power beyond the body and stuff like that, working on internal mechanics, getting the Dantian to move first and six harmonies follow behind, all those kinds of things, as well as to talk about the principles and theories of the system, not just the physicality. And yeah, also to clear up misconceptions about the style, because there are a lot of misconceptions about Northern Chinese martial arts, as I've seen on the internet. But yeah, like one of them in particular is one that's long fist means long range, which is not necessarily so. Long fist is talking about more long power, long force that reaches through your joints, not just coming to the end of the fist, but reaching through way past where the opponent is. And this gives a kind of projection energy that it sends them a lot farther than you normally would. But yeah, it's that reaching force that reaches through that Long Fist is about. And as it comes to ranges, it's actually more of a mid-range style. And the idea is that you change your Shenfa, your body mechanics, to get it so that you can have all four limbs available to you at any given time. Whereas normally, kicking is for long range, and then punching is for mid-range, and then you wrestle up close, right? Well, in our Shenfa, it's common to retract the hips or turn the chest in order to get the arm longer or the leg shorter, depending on the range that you're in, so that you can attack with all four limbs at any given time. So there's those kind of misconceptions that a lot of people don't really understand, and I wanted to put it out there, at least from what I've been seeing.
So what's the sort of base of experience and knowledge that you drew on for this analysis of Shaolin Long Fist?
Well, basically, I've learned a version of Shaolin Long Fist from all three of my main teachers, from my original teacher in Fox Lake, then my teacher in Wisconsin, and now my current teacher, Neil Ripsky. So I've mostly been doing with the stuff with my current teacher, but I've had all this experience from the others that I drew from to cross-reference and all that, so I could see where these things line up. And that's where most of my analysis comes from, is those three teachers and those three viewpoints.
So I just want to clarify that when you're talking about styles and sort of changing from one style to another, using one style as opposed to another style, what exactly is it that defines or delineates a style? Is it encapsulated in a particular form or forms, or is it a particular way of moving, or does it have to be is there kind of an entire, does it encapsulate an entire system? When you're talking about different styles, what is the thing, what are the things we're actually talking about?
Okay, so a style, really, I look at it as a method to get skills. So you have, say, a mountain, right? Like a mountain, and you're trying to reach to the peak, right? So styles are just trying to get to the same peak, but they're all starting at different ends of the mountain. So where, say, Bagua, they may start here and then they start circling up the mountain. Then you have Tiger starting over here maybe, and he's hopping from tree to tree trying to get up. So these are really just methods to get to the skills that you're looking for, which the skills may be just the instinctive nature that all these skills become part of yourself. Whereas you no longer have to think of rooting into the ground. You no longer have to think of becoming soft. You no longer have to think of all these things, but they become natural. So these are really just to try and get those skills, but it's just a different method of doing so. And forms I view as more like textbooks, not really a system. So you get your textbooks and you read them, and then you write down the bullet points. So the bullet points may be your principles, and it's like, okay, these are the important things I need to look at. And that's what is the important part to look at here. And that's where everything else is built off of. So you get your bullet points, you read through the book. Okay, now I'm starting to make more sense of this. So now it's not necessarily that you need the book anymore, because you already have the information out of it. So the forms are a way to get the information, but they're not necessarily the information themselves. Once you get the principles and they become part of your body, it's just the way you move. It's just the way that you are. So it's just a way of gaining skills. Whereas Tai Chi is, say, some of the skills like Peng Jin, Lu Jin, those same things can be found in other styles. Like drunken boxing, for example, is actually very close to Tai Chi. The only real difference is that where Tai Chi would remain, for lack of better terms, straight,
Vertical?
drunken, yeah, vertical, where drunken will leave that in order to gain an advantage, but it's still having vertical power. I like to use verticality as in not necessarily the straightness of the body, but the line of force that's driving between heaven and earth. So you see all those demonstrations of drunken boxers, and they bend over backwards, put their chest in the air. Well, most drunken boxers nowadays, unfortunately, they don't have verticality, which is why a lot of it is just flowery wushu stuff. But the trained drunken boxer will be able to take pressure on top of that, on his chest. We actually have a test in our drunken boxing system where you bend over backwards and put your chest into the air, and someone will stand on top of you. And that's testing the vertical line in the body. So while you still have that vertical line between the feet and the point of pressure, you don't have to be straight up and down to do that. Where Taiji will always continue to have verticality and straightness, Drunken will take the verticality and keep that, but it'll get rid of the straightness for the advantage. And also talking about the 3 spheres of combat, this being the sphere of your opponent, the sphere between you and your opponent, and the sphere of yourself. When fighting, you generally try to take control at least of 2 of those spheres, and then you're gaining the tide of battle. So Taiji will try and maintain itself, maintain the space between the opponent and you, and then take over the opponent as well. So it'll try and get all 3. But Drunken Boxing will get rid of, like, it'll give up itself for control of the other 2. So it's controlling the opponent and the space between, but it's not necessarily needing to control itself. So that's like the differences between Drunken Boxing and Taiji. But Pungjin is still a thing in Drunken Boxing. Lujin is still a thing in Drunken Boxing. So Pungjin is described as the barrel on the chest, keeping this expansive energy at all times and not letting that concave, otherwise you lose your structure. And Lujin is the idea that you're drunk, you're not trying to stop someone's force. The guy's wanting you to go that way, so you're like, okay, I'll go here, and you just turn that into your advantage. So very much like Taiji, just a little bit more drunk. But yeah, so I look at systems as just methods to gain skills, but the skills are all at the top. And you eventually, when everybody reaches the top, it's like, oh, hey, you're here as well. That's cool. How'd you get here? And then you can realize, okay, the Bago guy circled up the mountain. The Tiger guy was leaping from tree to tree. Maybe at some point their paths intersected. So you can look at this intersection and be like, okay, what's this? So in Taiji, there's this energy called Taijin or plucking jin. But that's like the main energy of mantis boxing, is plucking them off roots so that you can eat them, because you're a small bug, so you need to bring them down to your level. So this part where the mantis is like, that's like the crux of the system, it's also found in Taiji. So at this point, they cross-reference each other. It's like, okay, you got it through here, and you got it through here, but it's all the same. So we can just, I already have the skill of plucking, so I can just apply it. Okay, now we move on. So now it's moving faster and getting skills faster than you normally would have otherwise. It's just cross-referencing between styles. They start out very far apart as they're on different sides of the mountain, but as they get closer and closer to the top of the mountain, they become more of the same. So it's really just differences in appearances, differences in flavors. And some of the skills may be emphasized more than others. Like, for example, how Mantis emphasizes plucking more than most things, whereas in Taiji, it's one of the secondary energies, so it's not as important, but it's still an important part of the system. So it's really just favoritisms, flavors, shapes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so different paths up the mountain, and it sounds like you're equating styles with sort of training methodologies designed to develop specific skills that are aiming for the same place, but variety is the spice of life, basically.
Yeah.
And the way I usually view things is through the lens of principles, and principles are the most fundamental and primary. The principles of science underlie everything, and they express and manifest differently in different realms, but it's the same underlying principles that drive everything.
Indeed. Yeah, the principles are what's really what we're trying to do here.
And I love the textbook analogy too, because I was thinking about, like everything I learned from like my college and grad school textbooks. You know, I don't remember the textbooks themselves and haven't looked at them in a long time, but I still know how to do calculus, for
Right.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, you don't need the textbook anymore. It's not like it's your daily reading, right? You can still like refer to the textbook and be like, okay, like say like when we're doing a form, say this form is a mantis boxing form, so it's working on plucking gin most importantly. So it's like, okay, study plucking, and I do that in the form, but I could also do that outside of the form because I don't really need the textbook anymore because I know what plucking is. So I could just take the movement for plucking and just practice that in drills, and then I'm working on that specific skill, which is why that actually Fujigongfa is means supplemental exercise, but it's usually the term for like secret exercises that I hear most often. That's you don't get taught most of the times in school or in the schools, but it's the stuff that gets you the skills the fastest. Whereas in say one of the forms, you may do all your form stuff, and then in this one spot you do the pluck. But if you just work on the pluck itself, then you're getting more plucking practice than if you're doing the form where you only practice the pluck once. So it's taking those skills out of the textbook and practicing them directly. So yeah, it's just taking those principles, those body mechanics, and then working on them directly and trying to get them working rather than just doing a pretty form, right?
Right, taking the components out and playing with them and getting them to each work individually.
Indeed.
So, what are you working on these days? What's the primary focus in your martial arts business?
In my business, you say?
Yeah, in your martial arts business, what's the primary focus these days?
Well, as far as business goes, I'm currently opening up a new school. It's a fixer-upper, so I'm still working on it, but good place, good space. And I'm also trying to open up classes in a fitness place as well as a chiropractic. So I've got that going for me. And my monkey book is going through editing, so that's almost up and out. And then me and my teacher and then my kung fu brother are all working on a mantis book together. So that's coming along pretty well. As far as martial arts practice per se goes, I've been mostly working on changing quicker and quicker. In the later parts of our system is just working on walking a circle and then doing one of the systems, and then walking the circle and then doing one of the systems. And then the better you get, the quicker you change. So now it's no longer I walk for a bit and then I do a system. Now it's I take a step, I'm in another system. I take a step and I'm already in another system. So it's just trying to get those things working faster and faster and becoming more natural, less clunky and robotic, and just completely changing and going with the flow of motion. That's like the big thing I'm working on right now.
And what do you want people to know about, and where can people go if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
I have a website, redjadedanielson.webnode.com. Danielson has a dash in between it, not the sideways dash, but this dash. And that has all my information on it. It has my online classes, which are available. I currently have Shini Liuhe classes, Taiji classes, and Long Fist classes on my online course. It also has links to my books, as well as my blog and any information about me. And then it's also being updated soon once I get my local address going and my school running.
Awesome. So you're teaching in person and online, creating educational content, writing, and advancing with your own practice as always.
Just
You're
forever be a student, right?
Yeah, totally. It's great being on the path. And it's it sounds like a really great uh, kind of melting pot of these fundamental ideas and principles from Chinese martial arts and particularly the internal martial arts, which is a whole universe unto itself. So when in this video or in the comments to this video, can you drop a link for your site or for whatever is the best way for people to find you?
Absolutely, will do.
Awesome, that's perfect. So lots of interesting paths we could go down in all of this, but in the interest of keeping this bite-sized, we'll wrap things up there and perhaps talk more in future conversations. And I'm sure we'll be seeing each other around the electrosphere.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Great. Keep up the good work, Danny. I will be seeing you soon.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.